Hanson.
No,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. All right, we are live. Thank you, Jana. I'm going to call to order the May 15th meeting of the Housing and Redevelopment Authority. Welcome, everyone. Let the record show that we have 4 commissioners in attendance: Gabler, Olson, Hanson, and Somnus. O'Brien is joining us virtually. He can participate in discussion but not in voting. So a quorum is present. The first thing on the agenda is to approve the agenda.
I'll move approval of the agenda.
Hanson moves, and a second.
I'll second that.
Gabler. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous, 4-0. Then the April 24, 2024 meeting minutes.
I'd move approval of the minutes.
Gabler,
I'll second.
Olson. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. The next item on the agenda is the opportunity for public comment. We have a member of the public. Welcome, EDA Director Bida. Do you have any comments for us today?
Happy spring.
Oh, happy spring. Perfect. Thank you very much. Then, moving right along to new business, we're going to talk about a sign on the HRA property in Tofty. Jason's going to tell us about that.
Sure, Chair. This is be pretty brief. I spoke with the developer of the Temperance Trail project that we've been talking about for a while now. Talked to them yesterday late afternoon. This is on the agenda because they wanted to ask to make sure that we would be comfortable with them putting a sign that's so the southwest part of the property actually runs up against the trail, both the Kitchikami bike trail and walking trail, and then of course the 61. And so they would like to put up a coming soon sign with the realtor's contact information and houses starting at 290,000 sort of thing. They would love to drum up, of course, some interest before they get going. So, but because the HRA is still the owner of that property, I wanted to bring it to the board to make sure there'd be no issues. And if folks are comfortable with that, I'd love for someone to make a motion to approve to allow them to put a sign on the property for that purpose. If you're okay with that.
I'd move approval of that.
And I'd second.
Gabler and Olson. On the southwest, I have to look at the map. I can't picture how that.
It's about where the trail kind of jogs.
Correct, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
I
yeah.
think
Exit?
there's a billboard there, which I think is owned by,
Sawville.
being rented by Sawville Outfitters.
I think
Further
you're-
up
I
block
think you're
that,
correct.
but other than that.
It's going to be slightly bigger and right in front of the, no. It's not going to be very large, but they just want some sort of presence
idea.
there.
Great idea.
Absolutely.
Also, just so the folks know, this is the only other update, because we're talking about temperance. It's later on the agenda, but I just want to jump to it quick.
Sure.
Is simply that our agreement, we extended the agreement because the development agreement we have with the developer, because they went to IRRR to ask for those funds, so it kind of kicked the timeline back a little bit while we were waiting for that process. Their deadline, however, is to close on the property by August 1st, and I've been very clear with the developer, and they're very aware. This requires that they go to the July Planning Commission meeting at the county. So they have to, which means they have to submit all of their documentation by the end of May, or maybe it's June 1st, to the county to be on that agenda. So obviously these things, you have to kind of back into the dates, but all of that's to say, if they're not on the Planning Commission meeting in July, then the HRA has the option to renegotiate. Either we extend it or we can terminate that agreement and look for other options for development. But just want to be transparent about that. These things always, of course, take longer than anyone wants them to, but they are working on that documentation right now, and according to them yesterday, they will be ready to have it all into the land use department here. So,
Is that for final plat or?
so several months ago, we went before the Planning Commission for approval of the conditional use permit.
Oh.
That was approved. They still need the plat approval, final plat approval. So, technically, I believe there's a little conflation or confusion, but I think they still need preliminary plat approval.
Oh, yeah.
Because it includes the stormwater, the final stormwater and septic mound arrangements. So as long as they get preliminary plat approval, we should be fine. So in July, they're going to seek that preliminary plat approval. If that gets approved, then there's the next meeting they can go for the final.
Any need for warm bodies at the planning commission?
If you, I mean, it would be welcome for sure. I'll let you know. I want to make sure that everything is ready to go on the up and up, and we have a little time, of course. But I'll update the board in June with those dates to be ready, and see if your presence would be welcome either way. Any other questions about that? Okay.
Okay, then we should vote on the motion.
Thank you.
All
Yes,
those in
Chair.
favor signify by saying aye.
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 4-0. Very good.
Thank you for that. I will convey that to them.
All right. The other item of new business is the updated proposed 2025 levy request, which is regarding the affordable unit preservation.
Correct.
Jason?
So, Commissioners, you saw this last month. We are running up against, of course, a timing issue. The long story, relatively short, HUD requires a letter to be sent out a year in advance by the property owner if they're not going to renew affordable contract. So Harborview Apartments is the subject we're talking about. They have determined they're not going to do the renewal of the HAP contract, which we know about, which is why we're involved with this building. The timing issue really is that letter has to be sent out by the end of June. And it may be the case that we don't find out about one or more of these alternative funding sources in time for them to send that letter out. So we're working on the letter now. The issue is the letter has to inform tenants, one, hey, the property owner is not renewing the contract, and their intentions with the property. If we're not partnering with them or we don't get the funding, their intentions will change. They won't be reserving 22 of those units for Section 8 tenants necessarily. They might still, but I don't suspect that's the case. So the reason I'm including this here is because you'll see that the only line item to change from the budget that I proposed last month is the affordable unit preservation line item, to make sure that regardless of what happens with the two other sources, again, that's the closing with One Roof to reimburse us for the ARPA funds we gave them. And then the other one is the bill before the legislature that provides $250,000 for this project. Again, I'm just trying to cover our bases. If by the time this goes before the county board and for final approval in December, we'll know at least about the bill before the state. So we can change this, amend this budget. I have no doubt the county will have no issue with us reducing our budget request. If that's the case. What I want to make sure of is we can't enter into an agreement, which we have to do in the next couple of months with them. We don't want to, and we can't enter an agreement unless we have the funds to actually back up that agreement. So this is just to cover our bases. Again, One Roof has already, Minnesota Housing's approved that. It would be difficult for me to foresee a situation where they wouldn't close on that. They're already undertaking, you probably heard the WTIP interview maybe. They're starting that work now for the initial phase, and their closing with Minnesota Housing is going to be in early 2025. Again, all of this just comes, that's how long it takes to close. All of this just comes down to timing. Birchwood's closing, to be clear.
Yeah,
Sorry.
was Harborview Birchwood, yeah.
I know, I'm sorry, there's lots of.
I was like, wait a minute, what?
It's Tetris. It's it's funding Tetris. Again, the only reason, and I want to put this before you, the only reason I want to increase it, I think you probably recognize by now, I don't want to ask for money we don't need, or I want to be very good stewards of the resources we get. And I want to make sure that this, from my perspective, Harborview is a very important property in this community. And I want to make sure we have the funds to carry forward our obligations and to preserve those units. Again, if one or either of, or both of those go forward, this would get eliminated. Commissioner?
How much have we extended to Birchwood at this point of the $250,000 loan? I think that got the funding for from the ARPA money.
We had two things. We had the loan and then the grant.
Yeah.
Of the loan, about $86,000.
Okay.
I talked with them this week and asked, hey, what do you think about not needing the rest of those funds? And they said, That would be great, but it's very unlikely, because they're starting that rehab now. They said that in fact, they're going to get additional resources now to wrap up their first round. So they will be using all the money we've offered them. But that's where my brain went to, of course. Any other questions for commissioners? I was very hesitant I don't want to put this on the budget at all, but it's a one-time, maybe not even one-time request, and only a backstop. And I'd be more than happy if we get the funding after Minnesota Housing closes to return or to change our budget. That would be fantastic. So this is what I'm proposing, recommending that we put to get to Brady Powers at the end of the month here, but subject to whatever the board would like to see.
Do you need a motion on that?
Well, I think
Is it
because this is
an amendment?
this is the budget we'll be presenting to the
It's an
county.
amendment, yeah. I'd move approval of the amended budget.
Gabler moves. Is there a second?
Second?
Hanson, any further discussion or questions for Jason? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
4-0, motion carries. Yeah, that's just the timing of things and the complexity.
Chair, I was hoping, and we both thought we would have until into 2025, because it's a year from now before the change happens, but because of HUD's requirement. Also, I should note, the building currently has 6 vacant units. And the predominant reason is because people are uncertain about the future of their units being retained. And so it's a problem for the developer as well, and the owner, I should say. If they want to make sure we can tell tenants we're going to be partnering and providing that assurity, and if they can't tell them that, then they're rightfully concerned that tenants will just leave and they will have a half-empty building by the time this rolls around.
Yeah.
How are they staging this?
What part, Commissioner?
Sorry, you're gonna have to move out of your apartment so we can fix it?
That's
Right?
Birchwood.
That's Birchwood.
Birchwood.
Yep.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, Harborview is doing improvements. That's what the money that we're proposing to provide is for.
Yeah.
Most of those are things like windows, siding, roofing, and because these vacant units are vacant, they can make those improvements now. One of the things I should note, they did, obviously I've been talking with them quite a bit, they would like to start work this spring, before the contract expires, and they wanted to make sure that they could do that, and then the money we would help provide after we have an agreement in place could be reused to reimburse some of those improvements, because they want to make sure they can line folks up for the work. Personally, I have no issue with that. If they can get the work done, we would just provide reimbursement after they show us it's all paid. But so obviously, we're talking about them trying to prepare for work next year. These things take a lot of timing and planning and such, so. Any other questions about, Harborview or Birchwood, but Harborview in particular? Okay, thank you.
Great work. All the moving parts, all the balls up in the air, I don't know, you're just doing a great job of finding solutions to really challenging things
These
all
are
the
important
time.
units.
They are important units.
Well, the ball's up in the air. I think he's juggling is what he's really doing.
Yeah.
I'm glad it's not actual juggling. I'm terrible at actual juggling.
How about spinning plates?
Yeah, I haven't tried that, actually. Maybe I'll give that a go.
All right. Thank you, Jason.
You're welcome.
Good job. Did we vote? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Very good. Then, moving right along to the director's report.
Yes, more of me rambling. Apologies.
No, it's all good information, and we appreciate everything you have to share with us.
Absolutely.
Especially this.
Yes, this one's exciting. So, Commissioner Olson, you asked in the beginning, we have a groundbreaking date now for Gun Fun View. If you don't know, it's where there's fewer trees up the road. So if you haven't driven up Fifth, you take a gander. You can't miss it. They have, as you probably can see, they've made pretty quick work of getting that site prepped. They mean business. So the groundbreaking is going to be at 11 a.m. on June 14th. That is a Friday. It is also the day where there is a ribbon cutting for the Morrison, what's the name of that project?
Community Connection.
Thank you, Community Connection, thank you. That's at 3 p.m. So IRRR, the reason why we're doing it on the 14th is IRRR will be here. And so they're going to join us and speak at the groundbreaking. And if folks would like to see anything in particular at this groundbreaking, I'm all ears. This is not my forte, as Director Biden knows. I like to dig in the dirt, not to do the speaking and all those things. We have golden shovels, I'm aware of that. The plan is to have IRRR, myself and the developer share a few words, dig some dirt, some more dirt, and then that's pretty much it. So,
May I make a suggestion?
please do.
Signs.
Yes, we have signs.
Good.
The IRRR has a nice sign that we're going to put in the ground. We don't have any other, the developer has a sign, they have a coming soon sign with a rendering of the building, and would we like an HRA sign?
I think there should be some identification of us as having you having put this together.
I can certainly get, well, ideally, we will have a few projects where we can use it.
Yeah.
So if we could put in partnership with the HRA and have our logo on it.
Another HRA project.
We can just get an additional, we put on like vacant, on, vacancy, no vacancy, sign. Is that okay with folks then, if I order a metal sign that we can use?
I think it's a good idea.
At least one.
A few. It seems like we need a few. I don't
Need
think,
At least
think
two
about,
to get both way, or double-sided, so it gets.
I'm very thrifty, so I'm thinking if I can like have one and then move it to the other one. and-
well, I'm just even thinking like political, the
PR.
yard signs. If we get half a dozen of those, then we can, because there should be one in Tofty, there should be one, they should just be available because all of these projects are gonna work.
Yeah, that's gonna need a lot of signs.
Yeah.
Good problem to have if we need to
So
order
even
more.
just
Yes.
like that
Yes.
size of a sign with just our HRA logo, I think
Yeah.
that would be,
I was thinking about doing a little bit, because it's harder to see. I was thinking about doing, I don't know, I'll look at sizes and standards,
Okay.
but something, that you can see as you're driving up the road.
well, yeah, right. The different locations might require different
Right.
applications.
But I'll identify those and order a few signs, and then
That'd be
hopefully
great.
they're well-used.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's that. Mark your calendars. I'm going to be actually talking with WTIP after this board meeting, and I'm sure that will be on their radar too. So,
And I'm sure there'll be a media release about both of those
Yes.
things. I know Dave's working on one for the park, the,
community connection.
so.
And I'm
that
sure
we-
Todd Ford can help with one. for
Yes,
the
you were
county.
the first group that I wanted to tell about the date, and now that you know,
Yeah.
now I have to get to work on planning that.
And I'm here to help.
Great. I'll put you to work.
Yeah, I can,
Thank you, Chair.
yeah.
Tempest Trails, we already covered.
Yeah.
Just a quick update on Bjorkberg. This will be a pretty quick agenda here. Bjorkberg in the Heights, I have drafted a development agreement for the Heights, and I'm going back and forth with that team on those terms and items. They are waiting on bids, frankly, from general, or from their subs to come back. It is, that's the time of year where everybody's scrambling. So we need to wait until there's a more solid picture of what that final proposed or projected development cost is going to be before we lock everything in, and then they're going to be going to the county board and the city council for the abatement requests formally. So those we're planning on June, and I will continue to have it, planned for the next meeting until, they tell me we need to punt a little bit and push it back if they do. Otherwise, that project is coming along nicely. I saw some final designs. It will be a nice addition to the Highway 61 corridor. They have some fun exterior amenities planned with the fire pits and I think a playground for their building. And you may have heard yesterday morning at the county board meeting, I know that you two heard that the county board approved a tax forfeit parcel to the city of Grand Marais. That is for this project, stormwater. It's been tax forfeit since 2002, I believe. It makes a lot of sense, frankly. There's no legal access to it, and there's enough capacity there for a second phase to also utilize that property.
Nice.
Any questions about the Heights? Bjorkberg's in the same position. I am working on a development agreement, drafting that for them, but they're also waiting for some final figures from contractors so they can lock things in. One other quick note, IRRR, for the three projects we have, they sent over agreements. grant agreements that the HRA enters into with them. And then we attach that to the development agreement and basically pass along the requirements and tell the developer, we have to follow these, therefore you also have to follow these. There are some questions that I've asked IRRR about the grant agreements, and they're doing some research because I'm being pesky with details, and this is their first time doing the housing pilot program. And so we're kind of building the airplane as we're flying it. So we have those in hand. They're doing some, it's mostly regarding prevailing wage requirements and how we define projects. And in particular, the heights is a little bit complicated because it's modular. So in other words, they're building, it's like ordering, it's kind of like ordering an HVAC piece of machinery that someone builds somewhere else and you have it shipped and put on site.
Require prevailing wage for the workers at the factory.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a little fuzzier because it's
that
like,
can get kind of extreme, because then do you provide prevailing wage from people that provide them with their materials?
exactly,
Yeah.
like if you're getting a ball bearing for this, how far down the chain?
minor
you go?
Yeah, I mean,
So we've determined that the modular component doesn't need to have prevailing wage on it, which is just easier administratively. But the rest of it, we're trying to figure that out. So we have agreements, there might be some tweaks to it, but I just want to update you. Some of those things are still being figured out in the background.
And I think my memory serves correct, the state last year implemented new requirements.
Correct.
That the IRRR is also now only learning what that means that they have to do. That came from the legislature to all the state agencies. So everyone's in the plane up there that's not quite finished built yet. So
Don't get in the plane if you can help it.
don't get in the plane.
But Chair, your memory is correct. So it's not just that the housing program is new.
Right.
It's that those previously IRRR required prevailing wage for the projects that they funded. But the kind of tracking and reporting that's required has changed from the state.
Yeah.
So they're trying to figure out how to implement that.
Yeah.
And this is the first year, 2024, they're having to do that. So there's a lot of kinks being worked on. Commissioner?
Wasn't that an issue for what's now Gunflint View, doing site prep or utility work, that with IRRR prevailing wage, meaning they couldn't find a contractor to do that?
Oh,
I mean, it's a big issue, obviously, a lot of ramifications, and worse yet, the foundational requirements are being redone, and but it's just, I'm curious if we're going to have a lot more of that, where we get money that we can't use or developer can't use in this market because they can't find prevailing, nobody will agree to do the prevailing wage reporting, let alone the pay. I don't know that it's a payment issue, but it seems like it's a reporting issue.
Commissioner, actually, you're, that's on the agenda under other topics. You probably don't see it because it's on my version of the agenda. So I'll touch on that in just a few minutes. But you're
That's fine.
right on the money. The other thing I would just say is that last year, when then Switchback Village was trying to solicit for contractors, nobody locally responded, in part because of the very thing you're stating. They didn't get any responses because the contractor, after they got no responses, they had an arrangement with a contractor. And so there was a whole trying to figure out, can we use that contractor now? Do we have to rebid? Well, obviously we had to postpone for various reasons, and now it's underway, but we made sure they rebid it, and there were 2 responses, and they selected one, and that contractor's doing the work. So we worked that one out.
Okay,
But
good to hear.
keep your, we'll put a pin in the prevailing wage for just a minute here. Any questions about Bjork or Good Heights? Oh, Commissioner O'Brien.
No, I had another question on the Heights, but it may not be the right time for it. So I had a brief call with the developer, and he tried to explain to me an issue that was related to an adjustment that had been made in the AMI formula, but it also included in that, I think this is something you're aware of, that it had included a provision that for the affordable units, the landlord was responsible for the energy bill. Anyway, I didn't totally digest the issue, but I wanted to, if you were aware of it, I was curious what your take on it was.
Commissioner O'Brien, that's a great, yep, you're correct. I am definitely aware of it. What Commissioner O'Brien's referring to is that when we put in our agreements to date, we have referenced the AMI's rates that the state publishes. So I pull from the Minnesota Housing website. Annually they update, 2024 rents based on per county throughout the state. The issue in question is, do those rents include utilities or are those not include utilities? And we're not using the state's programs or funding, so there's no requirement that we do include utilities. That makes sense? So the LIHTC program and the other state funding does have specific requirements as to, they call it allowances for utilities. Like you have to allow, the rent that they publish has to have an allowance for utilities. Well, there's actually a chart for how much you need to provide as an allowance based on whether it's fuel oil or electric and if it's electric, heat, like what the tenant's actually paying. So there's a whole matrix. To date, we have not required that they have an allowance included in the rents. We've just said that the maximum rent for Gunflint, for example, is 60% AMI or 80% AMI. We haven't said you need to have an allowance for utilities. And every project's slightly different, of course, whether they're going to single meter all of the units or depending on how they heat it, propane versus, magic packs or whatever the situation is. So this came up with the Heights because we're trying to figure it out. The language that we used refers to them providing or making sure in the development agreement, make standard boilerplate language, that they ensure that the utilities are paid, and it spurred this larger conversation. So I'd actually, thank you, Commissioner, for bringing this up, because this is a great question for the board if you have a preference for how we handle that. I know every developer, everyone will tell you, we don't want to have an allowance for utilities. Of course they don't. But there is a, I was talking with Minnesota Housing about this week, and they provided me this matrix. We can build that in. It's one other sort of administrative mechanism we have to check on, and then of course the developer would need to build that in. So in other words, they would say, if you can rent a one bedroom for $1,200 a month, it's $1,200 minus heating with electric stove, electric dryer. So those allowances maybe equal $83. So their rent would actually be, in this case, $1,317 instead of $1,400. So that's a question for the board. Do we want to require an allowance for utilities, or do we want to be agnostic about that and say the maximum rents are at this level and the utilities are for you and the tenant to sort out? I know that's very minutia, but it's a pro forma question.
One question, Jason, is the allowance for utilities dependent? Does it differentiate between, for example, if you have a high efficiency heat pump, your allowance for utilities is much smaller than if you have a baseboard electric heat or something? I'm thinking that might provide an incentive for the developer to go with a higher efficiency option. But
Commissioner, you're right on the money. The issue is it doesn't. So, for example, Gunflint View, the developer builds very energy efficient buildings because they own and maintain them, and it just long-term makes more sense. So there's no incentive, and they're not rewarded for building more efficient buildings. They have to provide the allowance one way or the other.
Yeah.
And the allowance isn't dependent on anything other than it's a one-bedroom unit?
Correct.
Basically?
Yeah, and I'm happy to share the matrix that the state gave me. It's one, the one that they sent me is the one that HUD requires for tax credit projects. So it's not a requirement for we're not doing a tax credit project. It's just a table that they use to determine what the allowance should be. But it's basically studio, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, and then which appliances or what's using what heat source, basically. And then you total all those up. So they have a category that says other electric, that's everything else like lights, toasters, whatever. And you have to there's a dollar amount for that, irrespective of obviously of the tenant's usage.
I wonder, would it be possible for us to get that kind of information and bring it up again next month? Because there's a lot of moving parts here. And,
Indeed.
That might affect how I looked at it, was just what are those? So
yeah, I'm happy. What I'll do, if Commissioners like, I'll send you the chart that I got. Again, I just want to reiterate, it's a sort of a guideline because in this case, we're not required to use any specific format. We could create our own. The question is just how detailed do we want it to be for each project, and I'll leave it to you, but I'll share what I do have. And this is hot off the press as of, I think, Tuesday, or maybe Monday this week. So we're still obviously trying to sort this out. But thank you, Commissioner, very much for bringing this up.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me that the trade-off would be, if we don't include a utility allowance, then it's possible we might get a few more units. That the developer might be more flexible in terms of allowing the portion of number of units that they include. If we do include an allowance as a requirement, then the developer might be more resistant to, then there might be more pressure to minimize the number of units that are in that category, because the payment to the landlord would be reduced by some of them. Anyway, so I agree with Commissioner Gable. It's a good idea. Let's digest it and discuss it again next month.
Could I just ask another question related? Could we set our own utility allowance and make a differentiation for projects that have more tight energy packaging or more efficient energy sources that they're using? Is that possible?
The short answer, Commissioner, is yes, we could. I think what that would require is a pretty, well, fortunately, we have a Commissioner O'Brien. We may not, I'm signing you up for something. We may not always have a Commissioner O'Brien, so my only concern with that is we would have to be able to really tie our matrix to the efficiencies of buildings. Like, we would need blower door tests, we would need to have a list of all of the things that they're using. We're trying to get some of the data anyway, but it would just be another layer, and I'm open to exploring that, absolutely, but it's just a question of how involved we want to be with that process.
That's an interesting idea. I mean, you could just you could make it simple by saying if the building is certified Energy Star, then there's no energy allowance required. If it's not, then then the HUD formula applies. But anyway, it's an interesting topic, and I'm happy to more time back.
Great. I will send what information I do have to the board happily. It's obviously something that the Heights Group and others we want to work out as soon as we can. And to Commissioner O'Brien's point, the reality is for future projects, if we do have an allowance included in any AMI rents or that requirement, it's just a math problem that will determine how many units they can do at what level. So, okay. Thank you again, Commissioner. The next thing on the agenda is Harborview. We already talked about that. The only thing to add there is that I've met with the Duluth HRA. We're trying to meet with HUD. We really want to make sure this is a little bit of who's on first, because the building, when it converts, every tenant gets what's called an enhanced voucher, and so the question is, once they get that enhanced Section 8 voucher, who's in charge? Because HUD just gives it, like, they just get it from HUD. And typically, the standard process is you go through the Duluth HRA. In this case, you're on the list, you get a voucher, and then you can use it at a property that becomes available. So this is a little backward, like, it's an atypical situation. Everything I've come to Cook County is an atypical situation, which is great, keeping me sharp, I think. So we're working with HUD and with Duluth HRA to try to sort out how do these get managed? There's a whole litany of questions from tenants, even. Who decides what the rent is? Who's the contract with? All of those sorts of details we're trying to work out in advance of this letter, which is, again, why the budget line item went up, to give us more time to figure some of this out. That's it on Harborview. EDA HRA partnership. So this is just, I wanted to update the board generally. I'm glad Director Vitus here. We have, by virtue of being one-person shops whose work overlaps considerably, and I have to acknowledge the EDA has to date been a really wonderful partner. And they will have more. I've already outsourced some of the housing requests to the EDA in the last week alone. There's 2 more because we don't have all of our money is spoken for. And so they have some business development funds that may be a good fit for some of these requests. And you may not be surprised to learn that once people saw that the HRA was able to get some resources and help some housing, people had questions about more resources to help their housing. which is what we're here for, but of course, we have limits on what we can do, what we can get, and how the programs work. So, the long and short of it, I suppose, is the EDA and the HRA have been partnering, working together, and we are, unless the board has qualms or thinks otherwise, we're going to continue to do so. In part because we've long talked about, 2 years, seems long, about staff support for various things. Both Director Biden and I have been very resistant to that in our own respective roles. But we do recognize there are things that each of us are better and worse at. And so we've been trying to leverage those things to what we believe has been pretty good effect. And so we're intending on continuing that. And just want to be transparent that that partnership is sort of a natural fit for us because of our experience together and because again, of the respective strengths and opportunities, maybe I'll call them, that we each have. So really, the reason it's the agenda is because Director Biden is going to be talking about it, I think, with her board next week. Just saying, hey, we know the community determined that a merger wasn't the right course of action, totally aware of that. And we want to be transparent that we're still two separate entities, but trying to maximize efficiencies and maximize what we do have. And again, we're going to them to ask for help. They're asking, I've been helping the EDA with reviewing documentation, looking at golf course. I'm going to be part of the strategic planning process to think about how housing development fits in the larger conversation. So there's a Venn diagram, and there's not an insignificant middle portion there with housing and economic development. So
Bravo.
just FYI, I now know more about golf courses than I thought I would. And no, the HRA does not want to have any part of owning a golf course, just for the record. Any questions about that?
How is this on a golf course?
More of those would be fantastic. I'm all about that.
There was a preliminary plat on the west side of the golf course. That's been part of the conversation for a long time. So be careful.
If they want to provide the money, that's great.
Any comments or questions about that?
Okay.
I think it's wonderful. I think the two of you have a partnership that existed before either one of you came here, and I wholeheartedly support that you should continue to support each other in the way that you know is the best way.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And thank you, Teresa.
One note I'm sorry that I had glossed over. I just wanted to make sure folks were aware. For both Bjorkberg and the Heights, the development agreements that will be coming in the next month or so have, and I've talked about this, but I have specific numbers to put to in the ether. We had to provide a match for the IRRR requests in both cases, of course. We did not get fully funded either request. So, of course, when we were working with IRRR and we knew that we weren't going to get the full funding amount, we said, well, okay, there's now a gap. How do we fill that gap? And we said, well, plug this in. We'll figure it out later. We have 2 days. Not a lot of time to figure out a gap. As I continue to work with these folks, respective to different parties, the number right now that we're committing, that I'm going to be bringing in the development agreements to you is $200,000 match for the Heights. Of course, on top of assistance, a lot of technical assistance and other Lloyd Johnson resources, et cetera, and $180,000 for Bjorkberg. Those are both from ARPA monies. And I bring that up because the American Rescue Plan funds have to be committed by the end of this year and spent by 2026. I want to make sure that we commit and spend all of those dollars if we can. So, otherwise the county has to turn them back. Nobody wants that.
No.
So I'm just letting you know, that's what you'll be seeing in the documentation, but we have some figures just to pencil to paper. That's what's been going on. So,
Okay.
sorry, I just realized that I skipped over that.
Yeah, no,
Envelope and energy update. I just want to let you know all the money has been allocated. The $20,000 for that pilot program has been earmarked. We had, I think, 9 applications. We had to pause several of them because we didn't have enough funds to do them all. I think what that says is there's definitely a demand and desire for this kind of assistance to help our housing stock. There are, I think, of the applications that are proceeding right now, the majority of them are income qualified to have entire grants. So in other words, their income is low enough where, and I believe it's 60%, below 60% AMI for the household, where we are able to fund the whole window project. So now it's the fun time where we're going back and forth on the grant agreement documentation and the bids from the contractors, and we're doing this partnership. But we're working all of the kinks out, so to speak, and I think it's going to be a fun thing to see happen. So we have a couple of bids already in. We've approved a couple, and now we're just waiting for these contractors to get back to folks for the other projects. So just want to give you a brief update there. That's
Clarification, you
Jason,
said,
I've got something to add there.
yes.
I've been just early stages of exploring a potential source of funding for this program longer term. There was a notice of funding opportunity issued by EPA in February for something called the Inflation Reduction Act Community Change Grants. And these are, this is for a total of $2 billion. The applications are due in November, but it just seems like a very good fit with this. They specifically are looking for place-based investments focused on community-driven initiatives to be responsive to community and stakeholder input, focused on climate resilience and so forth. And it says the eligible entities would be a partnership between two community-based nonprofit organizations, or a partnership between a CBO and one of the following: a federal, a local government, an institution of business. So it seems to me that the structure that's already in place is a really good template for an application for this EPA, this community change grant. I'm happy to take the lead on exploring this further and seeing if it's a good, laying out an outline of a grant application. But it seems like that might be a very promising avenue for getting longer term funding for it.
Sold, Commissioner O'Brien.
I think we are happy to allow you to take the lead.
Are you going for the whole 2 billion?
Do we need to make a motion?
That would be the trick. I think that would be, I'd want to consult with you, Jason, and with Grace, I don't know if Grace is still heading that up.
Andrew Orist, the county. Yeah.
But anyway, with public health representative, to just kind of get a sense for what's a manageable trajectory for the program. And then we'll lay out the application accordingly.
Well, Commissioner O'Brien, it sounds like we have a couple of things we can connect on outside the meeting, and I'd be happy to do that. The first thing my brain thinks is, what are the requirements for managing the funds, and how much do we need to escrow to make it worthwhile?
Yeah.
So, but I think it's very handy to have you as the interim director for CCLUP as part of this conversation. I'm very glad that the money has already been allocated and there's a lot of interest, because the whole point of this is to show the demand and the need, so that we can prove the model and go ask for more funds. So please, let's talk about this offline and figure out what that could look like.
Sounds good.
And is the I don't know what exactly to call it, the preliminary process that those homes went through, the audit, or
The Healthy Homes
is
Assessment.
that ongoing? So more applicants are going to be getting in the queue while we're waiting to find more funding, or how, what's
So
that?
what we did, Chairs, last year, the county had done a healthy housing assessment round, if you will. There was a grant round they had received. That terminated, I think, in spring of last year or something. We went first to those initial applicants who went through that process, who were
Right.
eligible based on the project parameters, and asked them, are they interested in going through this grant program? I believe, and that's as far as we got, because there was enough interest to account for all the funding.
Right,
They're continuing, they got funded for another healthy housing
that's
assessment
my
grant.
question. Okay.
Yep, so there's going to be a pipeline, as long as we continue to work on those things concurrently.
Good.
Yep, there'll be a pipeline for that.
Great, that's awesome.
so there were 9 projects that came out of that Healthy Homes.
I believe that there were 9 eligible projects that were interested, is my understanding, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And you're able to fund,
Well, what we have to do is, because it's a little complicated, but until we know how much each project's going to be, we have to pretend the full amount for every one.
Yeah,
Because we have to get bids from contractors.
yep. Got
So
it.
right now, I think it's 4, that we've earmarked for 4, because it's 5,000 is the maximum, and we have
Apiece, yeah.
$20,000
Yep,
in the
okay.
program. Yeah,
That's great.
yeah. But I suspect it will be, based on the projects that we've seen, I think it's probably going to be 5, maybe 6 projects that will get funded, but we'll see. We'll see.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's great. I have no doubt that that program will have, be subscribed for quite some time.
I suspect you're correct.
Look around at the
Should be.
homes.
Yeah,
and-
should be.
Yeah, I mean, no different than anywhere else in America. The housing stock is old and needs attention,
The way I
so.
look at it is houses with poor windows and poor envelopes are literally burning money.
Yep, yep.
Literally just
Yep,
burning money.
Exactly.
It's like they're stoking dollar
Right.
bills into their
Yeah,
stoves.
absolutely,
And
Yeah.
why would we not stop that?
exactly. Yep.
Yeah, that's, I guess, selfishly, my primary objective is to help the structural longevity of the house, to ensure that we don't lose more units.
Yeah.
But that has the
too.
obvious indirect or direct benefit of preserving utility costs
Yeah.
and fossil fuels and such, so.
Yeah. Great.
Lots of good things overlap there. I just want to give an update on that. Oh, throw my pennies right here. Other topics, a few things, thank you. One, just quickly, Norris Scogan. We're all familiar with that. I think it's a project in the east side of town, east of 7th Avenue East. That the gal's name is Jane Penner, who is spearheading this, sort of more of a philanthropic thing than anything else, which is, again, fantastic. Please, more of those. I had discussed with the board previously that, they were they wanted to just do this and break even, and unsurprisingly and unfortunately, there's bedrock.
No.
Yes, there's bedrock. So the quote that they received to remedy that from the northern part of the site is, I believe it was about $106,000. And so, Kimberly Wolf from Wolf Realty has been wonderful in helping to work this project through. I believe they got plat approval, by the way, from the city. And so Ms. Wolf reached out and said, hey, we ran into this blasting issue. I had told it before the HRA, is here. If we can provide something, we will, because it's such a good project. So letting you know, in June, this happened last week, so in June, I'm going to be bringing a resolution. We have some pre-development funds that we had received from Lloyd K. Johnson, and also in our budget last year with some development dollars. So their request was if we could find $50,000. So I'm going to be proposing $25,000 from the money that we have, and I believe they're also going to be talking with the EDA in their business development fund for $25,000. So we'd have the magic match, which is what we have left to spend to put this over the finish line, or at least the start of the finish line, if you will. So
Is
How many
that
units are they going to do that?
I believe it was 12.
12,
single family?
Correct.
yeah, 950 square foot.
And their objective
To
here is-
be sold?
Correct, yep.
Okay.
They-
Only sold.
Only
No
sold,
rentals,
yeah.
no short-term or long-term rentals.
The issue, of course, you take that 106,000, call it 100, and you could just amortize that over the 12 houses and then raise the prices on each of those houses, and it'd still be less expensive than every house in the market. But they're trying to target a certain income level. And so that's why they're asking. So the resolution will include some of that information, but I just put it on your radar. We get to be, I guess, partners in a really wonderful project. That's probably what it looks like.
I had, just as an aside, I had a chat with a person that works at the border customs, or not sure, customs or border patrol, but when I mentioned that and the price point, she was like, oh, that sounds like that's for me, like really high interest immediately, so.
Great.
And I think that's the demographic they're looking at, so it's,
Yeah, we need more of those.
yeah.
Okay, so that's that. The other topic is coming back to the prevailing wage conversation. Just to keep you apprised, I've been having some more state and regional conversations about various things. One of them was prevailing wage. There's a bill that was before the legislature that would require if any city or municipality in the state did a TIF district, that the entirety of that project would require prevailing wage. So to your point, Commissioner, I was invited to attend this conversation with the lobbyists and the lawmakers to provide an outstate perspective, and tried to remind them that often, almost every time, one size fits all doesn't fit, especially in rural Minnesota, especially in northeast Minnesota.
Especially in Cook County.
And to try to help them understand when you're talking about doing a project somewhere like Grand Marais, much less Grand Portage or the Gunflint Trail, getting people to come up here is very expensive. And when we require prevailing wage on projects, it often edges out local folks from even being interested in bidding because they're busy enough, they don't need to deal with the headache. And my fervent goal and hope is that local contractors do get in on some of these bigger projects we're doing so they can work on these experience building these larger projects. I would love for a local firm to be able to skill up and scale up and be able to grow some of that business here. So that there's local shops building entireties of 10-unit buildings or whatever it is. That's my Pollyanna vision. And unfortunately, when prevailing wage is required, it's just another barrier to entry. Now, it's not the cost because people are often being paid that. But one example I gave is, I won't name the particular contractor, but there are contractors locally, builders, who, for example, their sons work on their crews, and their sons are in high school, and it's a great summer job. They learn skills, they learn if they want to be in construction or not, but prevailing wage means they have to pay their sons $45 an hour. I wish my dad had paid me $45 an hour to work on house projects. The point is, when you do that, you're immediately edging out people who are like, one, can't afford to do that, and two, I'm just not interested in dealing with it. So I'm trying to do my best to balance out protecting, with their big concern, the lobbyist concern, these are labor union groups, was wage theft in Minnesota, which is a big problem. But predominantly in the metro area, it's a lot more prevalent in the metro area and other metro outstate areas, Duluth, St. Cloud, Mankato, Rochester, where these larger, 200-unit projects are happening, and there's just so much going on, nobody's paying attention, whatever. I want to make sure that there are ways to protect wage theft from happening, absolutely, while also not having unintended consequences in greater Minnesota. So those conversations are ongoing right now. The TIF component of that has, I believe, been removed from the bill. They're going to take it up again next year. But there are a lot of these larger policy level conversations that are happening at the Capitol that will have impacts here. And I'm trying to worm my way into some of those and have been invited, fortunately, to talk about those with some folks, to try to just give them a little bit of a larger perspective than how, for example, we don't have the issue of having enough land like maybe Minneapolis does for a project. We have an issue of not having utilities and the cost to build on it. We just have different problems.
Right.
So that's one example. I'm participating in a Minnesota Housing Partnership focus group for northeastern Minnesota, talking about policy and housing. I was just asked this week to speak at a Rethos event about housing policy and zoning, and then I'm going to be talking with Wilderness Health to talk about housing intersection of health. So just to let you know, I just want to basically just let you know that I'm very, very happy to be asked to participate in these to make sure that our voices are heard. And I'm trying to do my best to represent the concerns we have in northeast Minnesota, and obviously especially Cook County. But I'm just very glad and thrilled that we're being asked to talk about it. So just so you know, I'm having some of these larger state and policy-wide conversations about various things.
Great.
Cool.
Yeah, I think it's really important that we have the opportunity to use our voice before the law is made. Because
Yes.
the unintended consequences that happen all the time otherwise. And clearly, I remember a few years back going to the Capitol and starting to hear legislators say themselves, we understand that one size doesn't fit all. And I felt like that was such a positive move that they were able, because prior years, like, no, we have to treat everyone the same, but everyone's not the same.
Yep.
So every situation, I get it, I don't want their job to try to figure out
Neither do
how
I.
to do that.
Yeah.
But yes, please let it be known that you are available to be our voice and to help inform those decisions. That's awesome.
The only other thing, Chair, I had, unless any questions about, if you say, don't talk to those folks, let me know.
Yeah. Stay home and sit by your computer.
Draft documents.
No.
Our phrase in Minnesota is "go for it."
Not if you're a
That's
UMD grad.
Gover.
Okay, so disclosure.
Thank you.
There you go.
Yeah.
The only other thing I had is just a reminder, I sent out the conflict of interest documents, and I received several from several folks. There are just, I think, a couple that are missing, but just a gentle reminder, it's that time of year. So, other than that, that's everything I have today.
Any questions for Jason? Any applause for Jason?
Yeah.
This is my job. But thank you.
Keep doing it.
It's always great when trees are being taken down for a new building. It's, it's,
Well, it's great. We think it's great. There are some people.
Oh,
that
I know.
I'm sure we've all heard from in the community who don't.
well, given the need for housing.
Yep,
It's always shocking when there's a change, but
Oh.
for sure.
they'll get used to it.
Everything's a trade-off.
Commissioner Sullivan.
Madam Chair, I did share with Jason, thinking about the fact that there are some concerns about trees that have gone down along the Gunflint Trail, that one thing we might consider as a group is helping to clean up the trail. And there's a document there, and it is electronic. We can send it out that way as well. But they're looking for people to help clean up the trail, and this group might want to consider that as a possibility.
With HRA logo on the back of our t-shirt.
We can each wear one of the signs
Yeah, I was
that
gonna say,
Jason gets. We'll
I'm
just
gonna get a sign.
tape
to
it
save
on our
money.
back.
Can you just tape the sign on your back? That would be.
Yeah, if you can email that along with the other stuff that you're going to forward, that would be.
Commissioner, would you send that to me if that?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. That's a great
It's a great
suggestion.
event.
Yeah. Yeah, it's,
There's no shortage.
Green, is that, Gunflint Green Up, is that correct?
Clean up.
Clean up.
Clean up.
Clean up. They've changed the name.
Okay.
June
June 8th.
8th.
9 to 11 a.m.
No, 11 to 1.
The cleanup.
Oh.
The cleanup is 9 to
Oh,
11.
the celebration.
And then 11
I'm
to
just
1 is
going
the
to
celebration.
I'm not going to go
I see
to
where
right
you're-
now.
But what we could do is sign up as a group so we have a contiguous area.
sure.
Oh, yeah.
Close to the project.
There we go.
That was
Oh,
my
that'd
thought,
be great.
you know.
Okay, cool.
I will
Be
say-
happy to provide trash bags, and the Cook County Highway Department picks up the trash
Oh,
the
terrific.
following Monday, so.
Okay.
I'll say one of the fun things that's being a housing authority is all things housing means touches everybody. And I've had some fun, interesting requests from, do we have any dirt available from the site, topsoil, or any trees, or,
Rocks?
yeah, right, all of it.
Hey, why not?
Yep,
Plenty of rocks there.
yep, there's a whole pot, big rocks, a
Yeah.
lot of big rocks, so,
A big pile of big rocks.
yes.
Thank you for sharing that. We want to be good neighbors, good citizens. We're only here for good reasons, and we know that doesn't, everyone's definition of that isn't the same.
Yep.
But,
Yep.
man, people in houses, people in homes. All right, any committees?
I'll report for the Finance Committee, thanks to the miracle of good cell phone communication between Lutzen, Minnesota, and somewhere in New Mexico. The committee met today and had a discussion primarily around how we're doing with the QuickBooks to financial reporting formats, and the main concern of the committee is a practical one, that our official bookkeeper got his back surgery moved up from somewhere in July to June 11th, and so that we want to be as prepared as we can for the time that he'll be under stress, let's just say it that way, after the operation, because it's not, I've been through it and it's not fun, but so I need to get into QuickBooks, get myself set up, and I'll do that in the next couple of days. And the bookkeeper is well aware of his ability, and he's been working with Jason. He reports to get some of the questions answered, like how do grants get accounted for, those kind of things, and was our situation with the Birchwood, a loan to one roof or not, or is it a grant, if it gets repaid, how does that get accounted for? There's all sorts of questions that are good to be brought up and resolved, and that's what's going on now, so we're confident that our books will be in good shape. The other thing the committee can report is that we got a lot more money in the bank than we got possible expenditures right now, but that's thanks to just a lot of factors of coming.
Timing.
A lot of money in the bank, but thanks to the county mostly and others, but, so that's the committee report.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner Gabler. Commissioner items, do you have anything other, Bill? No? Commissioner Sullivan? Commissioner Johnson? Olson?
Commissioner O'Brien, anything to add?
No, nothing. I had no further development on that worksheet that you saw. I sent some information to Commissioner Hanson for the project on 7th Avenue East. Anyway, once I'm back in pocket, starting tomorrow, I'll follow up on that. Just make sure if you have any feedback on or if there's any feedback from the developer that you sent it to on that worksheet, I'll just I'll follow up on that.
Commissioner O'Brien, I think I CC'd you. He did receive it, and he's looking into getting the details for that worksheet. So,
Okay, good. Perfect.
it's safe travels, by the way, on your way back.
Thanks. We're close.
I just have one thing. I'm interested in adding to your list of things to do, apparently. Or just begin to discuss how to go about educating the local community as the apartment projects move forward and are.
Hey, if you can hear me, I think I just lost your audio.
Oh, I apologize. I muted. I'm sorry. Didn't mean to cut you out.
As the apartment projects and single family are ramping up and getting ready for lease up, I think we've always been hopeful that some opportunity will exist for people who are living in their homes, larger homes that they don't need, or too many stairs, or not appropriate for whatever reason, that they might be interested in relocating to those new units and selling their properties. That I want to feel like there's some kind of educational process in the community for people to understand about putting deed restrictions on their homes so that short-term rentals aren't allowed, and that they either, need to be owner-occupied or long-term rentals. And I don't know if that's something that we can work with local realtors, or just some ongoing, I don't know how, some community conversation on WTIP, or how do we go about educating people about that? Because I would venture a guess that a large number of homeowners have no idea that such an opportunity exists for them to contribute to the better welfare of the community by retaining the homes for those purposes. And but Commissioner Sullivan, and then.
I was just thinking that Anna Hamilton has already built in deed restrictions to some of her housing, so she might be a resource for this group, or if there was a community conversation, would be a
panel
great
with
person
Anna.
to be on that panel,
Yeah.
correct.
Teresa?
Cook County Higher Education does a fantastic job when they put on a series like this, and if there was someone willing to devote their time to teach a class like that, or kind of like how you navigate it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe an attorney and a real estate agent and a couple of other people to present information.
Sure. One other thing I'd add is I'd be happy to get a deed restriction template drafted that we can
Okay.
post on our website and provide free of charge for the community
Excellent.
if they want to. And then, of course, maybe having it there is available, but having some sort of informational session, maybe
Outreach
coupled with a couple
about
other topics for just generally for the community. And then they can go online and download the template and
Yeah. It just feels like with the momentum that's occurring now, this feels like a good time to start that initiative and create broad awareness about it, because we might be able to have an impact that way.
Great
Okay,
question.
thanks.
Thanks, Mike.
Anything else for the good of the order?
I move we
Hearing,
adjourn.
that would be one thing. A second?
A second.
Olson? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.
Good. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
And we're off the air.